Bava Metzia, Daf Yud Aleph. We begin with the Mishnah. It's 5 lines from the top of the page. The Mishnah introduces the concept of kinyan chatzar. Somebody decides he wants his chatzar to make a kinyan for him. The Mishnah will introduce one limitation. The Gemara will discuss another, that it has to be standing next to the chatzar. And the Gemara is going to look to prove or disprove that concept, first from a brisa and then from a story that happened. And the Gemara will discuss each one separately. So let's begin. The Mishnah discusses a case where some people are chasing after a deer that they want to catch, which obviously the deer is hefker, or a bird that they want to catch, or birds, young birds, and the deer or the bird are passing through someone else's field. And the owner of the field says, I want my field to be kind of that before these people grab it. I want it to be kanoi to me because it's in my field. It should be a kinyan chatzar, kinyan sada, my field belongs to me, it should be kind of for me. As we've seen in the past, there is such a thing as a kinyan chatzar. One's field could act, we saw, either as his hand or as his shliach, whether it's his hand or shliach, but the concept exists. So, will he be able to be kinded in that way by saying this? So the Mishnah says it depends whether the animal that is passing through his field is something that he could catch. If it's something that is hobbled, that is, the deer is injured, or the birds aren't flying, they're just hopping, then he can catch them, then the field can be kainah, because they're in the field has control over them. If, however, the deer is running normally, or the birds are flying, so it's too fleeting, there's no grip on them in his field, and then he's not kainah them by the fact that they're in his field. That's the Mishnah. Now, the Gemara begins by introducing a limitation on the concept of kinyan chatzar. The Gemara concept of Yehuda Shmuel, he says you have to be standing next to your field in order for the field to be kainah for you in kinyan chatzar. So the Gemara asks, why should that be? Rabbi Yosef Bar Chanina says that a person's chatzar can be kainah for him even without his intention, even without his knowledge. So if he can be kainah without his knowledge, what's the significance in him being there? So the Gemara answers, it can only be kainah for you if it is guarded, if it is protected. That is, the chatzar closes in, protects and blocks what's in there. Situation where it's not doing that, the only way that it's properly protected is if you are standing there providing protection, and you have a combination of the chatzar containing the object within it, you providing the protection, making sure that it stays within there, and therefore you have the two. But you have to have one or the other. Either the chatzar has to be innately protected, or you have to be providing that protection for it. Okay, that's the halacha. So the Gemara says, what is the source of this? Where do you see that a chatzar only works if you're standing next to it, or if it's at least protected? You need to have some kind of protection there. So one of first wants to bring a brisa, which is a proof to this. The brisa is in Hilchos Shikcha, and the Gemara is going to show that the brisa, as it reads, doesn't make sense. The Gemara is going to attempt to reread the brisa in a way which is a proof to this idea. Then we'll have other ways of reading it which is not a proof to it. Then we'll discuss how the psukim fit in. So the brisa discusses Shikcha. Now the halacha of Shikcha is that if somebody is bringing in the bundles of grain or some other thing from the field, and he forgets one, he overlooks one, then he has to leave it for the aniyim, the poor people. Now, there are two people involved in this forgetting. There's the owner, and there are the workers. The only way it's shikha is if both the owner and the workers miss it and forget about it. If there was never a point at which they both missed it, then it's not shikha. If one of them forgot it, or the other one remembered, and then even if it's vice versa, but if at all times someone remembers, then there is no shikha involved. The other question is, where were they at the time that they forgot this? Were they present in the field, or were they in the city already? And the third issue is it something that's ahead of them they haven't gotten to yet, or is it something they've already passed over? So the brisa says the following halacha. Brisa says that if the owner of the field has left the field, he's in the city, and he says, look, there's a bundle in the field at home, back in my field, and I know that the workers forgot it, but I'm proclaiming that I have not forgotten it, and I want to remember it, and I want it to stay not shikha. I want it to remain not shikha. I don't intend for it to be shikha at all, even if I forget it later. So does that work? He's proclaiming now that he wants it to stay his. He doesn't want it to become a shikha, even if he forgets it afterwards. What happens if he forgets it afterwards? Does that work? So the language of the brisa here is confusing. So the brisa says, so you would think that it's not shikha, meaning I'm about to prove to you that it is shikha. The proof is in the pasuk that says, "V'shachachta omer basadeh." It only becomes shikha if you forget it while you're in the field. but not ba'ir, basada v'lei ba'ir. If you forget it in the city, and this person's in the city here, it does not become shikha. So the Gemara asks right away, of course, the pasuk is proving to me that it's not shikha. But you just said that it is shikha. So you're trying to prove to me that it is shikha from a pasuk that says you can't do shikha in this city. So what's going on? So the Gemara therefore says you must reread the brisa and must be saying as follows. What happened is that the workers forgot it at first. And then he remembers it. While he's remembering it, he is aware that, and he wants to prevent the shikha from happening. Now, he wants to do this either all in the city or all in the field. That means you have two separated cases here which we're referring to. In both of them, the workers forgot it and the Baal Bayis remembered it. And then the Baal Bayis is afraid he's going to forget soon and he wants to prevent that from happening. He can prevent that if he's in the field, the Brisa says. If he's in the city, he can't prevent that from happening. Only if he's in the field can he prevent that. What's the reason? So the explanation is given by the Ritva, explaining Rashi, explaining the Gemara. What's happening here is that once the shikha process has begun, it's already started becoming hefker, meaning once the workers have already forgotten it, even if the owner has not, the shikha process has begun. He can now be kained with his field. By making a kinyan on it, kinyan chotzer, with his field, he arrests the shikha process because it's already partially hefker, and he grabs it with his field. He's kained from hefker, and it's not fully belonging to Aniyim yet. He's kained the part of it which is hefker, and therefore the shikha process can't complete, even if the Baal Bayis later forgets it. And now both the workers and the Baal Bayis have forgotten it because at the time that the workers had already forgotten, the shikha process had already begun. He grabbed it with his field. Therefore, it will never take fully effect because he's already canceled that part of the shikha. Now, that only works, the Brisa here means to say, if the owner is standing by the field. And if it doesn't work, if he's in the city. Now, what would the pshat in that be? Says the Gemara, must be. Because when he's standing by the field, he has kinyan chatzar. And that's because the chatzar is mishtameres hayadeh. It is protected through him being there. However, if he's in the city, he's not present. Therefore, there's no shimur. Therefore, there's no kinyan chatzar, and that's why it doesn't work. So what you see from here, le'inyanenu, is that the kinyan chatzar only works if he's standing next to the field. Since this is the only way we can think of to explain the brisa, it's a proof to that idea. So I'll tell you a different explanation to the brisa. You just have to change the text a little. Instead of the brisa saying Yachol lo yehei shikha, it should say Yachol yehei shikha. I would think that if he's standing, meaning this is really the old explanation. The old way we read the Brisa, the simple way. He's in the city. He wants to prevent it from becoming shikha. So he says, I don't want it to be shikha. I'm remembering it now. I don't want shikha to take effect, even if I forget it soon. So yachol yehei shikha. You would think that it does become shikha anyway. Shikha in the city doesn't count since he remembered it in the field, and if he gets it in the city, it's not a shikha, and therefore it's true. It's not a shikha. Simple explanation. Now, the Gemara says that would be a very nice pshat, but you can't say that because it's not true. Shikha in the city is considered shikha. We see that because the pasuk says leisashav l'kachtoi, shouldn't go back to take it. That means that you were in the city when you forgot it. That includes shikha that happened in the city. The Gemara says no, that pasuk is for something else. That pasuk is to teach me that there is a lav. It says leisashav l'kachtoi. It's not just v'shachachta. It's also leisashav. There's a lav to go back and take the shikha after you've already forgotten it. So the Gemara says, there's still a drasha. You're right. Leis Hashav is to teach me not to go back and there's a lav. However, I could have just said Leis L'chenu. What does it have to say Leis Hashav L'kachtoi? It's that extra word to teach me that there is shikha even in the city. The Gemara says, no, you need that for something else. You need that to show that it's only Hashav. It's only if you're going back. That's what it's called shikha. But if it's in front of you, it means you're working your way along the row and you forgot something in front of you, you haven't gotten to it yet. That's not called shikha. It's only shikha if you skipped it. You already passed it and it's behind you. You see that because it's only something which you have to go back to get, where there's a lois sashav, that's where shikha applies. If it's ahead of you, then shikha does not apply. So the Gemara says, no, there's still another limud to include shikha seir. Now Rashi says, the Torah says, yiyeh. It says, leger, le'yosem v'amon, yiyeh. That's to include even shikha seir. So you see, this pshat doesn't work. There is shikha in the city, and therefore go back to our original pshat, and therefore we do have a raya that you have to be next to a chatzar in order for it to be chayna, because it has to be mishtamer, to be protected through you being there. The Gemara says, Ula says this as well. that Chatzar only works if you're standing there. And Abba Bar Chana also says it only works if you're there. Okay. Now the Gemara brings a kasha asked by Rabbi Abba to Ula, and it's from a story that happened with Rabbi Gamliel. And this story is brought in a Mishnah in Perek Meiser Sheni. It's also brought in Masechus Kedushin. The story happens as follows. Rabbi Gamliel was traveling on a ship with the others of Canaan. And he remembered that he wasn't Meiser some of the property that he has at home, and he was afraid that people were going to eat it. And it was Tevel. There's a chazaka, there's an assumption that Talmid Chacham doesn't leave until he's Meiser things. So Rabbi Gamliel was upset that he hadn't, and therefore he wanted to do it there on the spot. So he wants to figure out a way to make it Meiser even though he's not home. So what did he do? So he said, when I get home, I'm going to take off a tenth. That tenth that I'm going to take over then, I'm calling it Meiser now. So it's Kriyas Shem Meiser right now. I have to give it. So I'm giving it to Yeshua. Yeshua was a Levi, and he said that it should be given to him. Now, what's the kinyan? So he said the land that it's on is rented to him. And Rashi says they did a kinyan on the land. He gave him money for the land. Land can be kind of by transferring just money, and therefore Rabbi Yeshua was kind of the land, and he was kind of the Meiser Rishon with it as well. He couldn't have a different way to be makna than Meiser Rishon. Meiser Rishon is only because it's metaltalin. It's only nicknamed with Meshicha and or Chatzar. Okay, so that was the first thing. And the second thing is he had to take care of Meiser Ani. It was a Meiser Ani year, not a Meiser Sheni year. So Rabbi Akiva ben Yosef, who was our Rabbi Akiva, was with him on the ship, and he was the Gabbai Tzedakah for the Aniyim. So he said another 10% that I'm going to take off when I get home is given to Rabbi Akiva, and again, its place is rented to him. Same type of kinyan. So the Gemara says, so you see, he was doing a kinyan chatzar. How could he do a kinyan chatzar if they were not standing next to the field? So this was a question that Rabbi Abba asked to Ula. Ula shrugged off the question by saying it seems like this rabbi has never learned anything at all in his life. So there was no answer that was given, but Ula clearly wasn't bothered by the question. So when Rabbi Abba came to Surah, he said, look, this is what I asked Ula, and this is what he said to me. So one of the Chachamim there said the answer is that he was not renting them the field to be kind of kinyan chatzar. He's renting them the field, they should be kind of kinyan agav. Something called the kinyan agav. When you transfer ownership of a piece of land, you could transfer ownership of metaltalin along with it, going with it. Although money is not kind of metaltalin, if you're being kind of land, it could be kind of the same. Money could be transferring ownership of the land. It could also transfer ownership of the metaltalin. And that's what was happening over here. So it's not a kinyan chatzar at all. So there's no raya from here. So the Gemara says Rabbi Zeir was makabel's answer. Rabbi Abba rejected it. He said, no, that doesn't answer. The Gemara doesn't say why. But Rava says why. Rava says it's very good that he rejected this, because if they were trying to do a kinyan agav, it could have just done a kinyan tzudit. It could have just done chalipin. And he could have purchased it from him with chalipin. Why did they not do chalipin? Why did they not just give him a handkerchief? They must have had a handkerchief. Give him a handkerchief. And when Rabban Gamliel took possession of the handkerchief in exchange for that, he transfers to them the meiser, wherever it is. Why didn't they do that? The reason must be because the owner of meiser doesn't actually own the meiser. The meiser has to go to the Levi. It has to go to the Aniyim. The other thing he owns is whatever value there is in choosing whom he wishes to give it to. That's the only bilos he has over it. That's a very small amount of money. It's not considered significant enough to transfer through chalipin. And the same way it's not significant enough to transfer through chalipin, it's not significant enough to transfer through a kinyan agav karka. The only way to do it would be actually make it hefker, give them the land, and then they could be kained through a kinyan chatzar through the land. And therefore he's insisting that this must have been a kinyan chatzar, not a kinyan agav. So the Gemara rejects this as well. The Gemara says, no, that's not a proof, it's not a raya. Really, the tevas hana is money, and you could transfer it through a kinyan agav. The reason they didn't want to use a kinyan chalipin is because there's a kasav that matnas kahuna has to be given, has to be in a sina, and chalipin doesn't count as an esina. Chalipin is derech mekach hamemchar. It looks like a sale. You're not allowed to be makne the matnas kahuna, the matnas aniyim, through a sale procedure. So chalipin is no good for that. However, agav karka is still called giving, and that would be fine. Now, says the Gemara, Rav Papa gave a different answer. Rav Papa said this is not a raya, because this entire case, even though the Kinyan Chatzar worked here, is not a proof to the general concept of a Kinyan Chatzar without the owner standing there. Because here, this Das Acheres Makne. Here, the owner of the field, which was in this case was rented to Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Akiva, they were not trying to be kind from Hefker. Rabbi Gamliel was trying to be makne to them. That's called Das Acheres Makne. It's not just a taker who's being kind from Hefker. There's a giver and a receiver. For a field to be a catalyst, then that's enough if it is a non-guarded field. What's the source for that? So, says you see it in the Mishnah. Our Mishnah, the Mishnah said, if you see people running, if the owner of the field saw people chasing after a deer or a bird, etc., he could be kaineh, only his field could be kaineh for him only if he could reach them, if he could grab them. It says Rabbi Yirmiyah, name of Rabbi Yechanan, and that's only if he could reach it and catch up to it. And Rabbi Yirmiyah asked, what would be if it was a gift though? What would be if it wasn't being kaineh from Hefker? What would be if it's a gift? And on that he said that he learned from Rabbi Abba Bar Kahana that even if he couldn't catch it, as a gift it works. And it didn't have to be mishtamer in the field. So what's the reason? Must be because when there's Das Acheres Makne in the gift, you don't need to have mishtamer like that. The chatzar only has to be mishtamer to be kind of from Hefker, has to be taking it away from its state of Hefkeris. The Das Acheres Makne, there's no question of Hefker to transfer through the service of the chatzar, service of the field, that would be enough. Now, the Gemara has another kaj here. The Gemara says, Rav Simi asked Rav Papa, what about the get? The get is Daras Acheres Makne, the husband's being makne to his wife. And the halacha is, Ula says, that a kinyan chatzar on a get only works if she's standing next to the field. So see, even though Das Acheres Makne, you still have to have, Mishtamaras, she still has to be standing there. So the Gemara answers, no, a get is different because it works b'karcha, it works against her will. Says the Gemara, so that's the opposite, that makes it worse. You mean to tell me that a get, where if she's standing there and she's trying to prevent it, it's chal anyway. Yet if she wants it, she's not trying to prevent it. It still only works if she's actually there. So you need her to be there anyway. So a matana, which does not work b'karcha, and if she's trying to prevent it, she can prevent it. Certainly, if she wants to actually be kind it, she should have to be there. So it means a get is easier to go to her, and still she has to be there in order for it to work, leaving Balkarcha out of it. So a matana, which is harder to go to her because it's up to her desire, certainly she should have to be there in order for the kinyan to work at all. Samara therefore gives a different answer. Rashi says, no, a chatzar has to fit into the dinam of shlichas. Although it's midin yad, as we said earlier, it's midin yad only to say that it works for a katan and a ketano. However, it still has to be the rules of shlichas. And the rules of shlichas are, zachan adam shlei b'fanav ein chavil adam shlei b'fanav. So a get is considered to be a chayv. And since it's a chayv, not something she wants, it has to be b'faneha. However, a matana, which is a schus, could be even shalai b'fanav. Now, we'll just conclude the sugya here, though we're already up to Daf Yud Vez. The Gemara says, all right, we said before that if the animal is running through the field and it's hefker, you can't be kained if you can't catch it, but it is being given as a matana, then you are kained even though it's running through the field. So the Gemara says, perhaps this should be a proof to a question that Rava had asked. Rava had asked if somebody throws a wallet through a house, he throws it through one door and it flies out the opposite door, is that a kinyan for the person whose house it is? Now, Rashi learns that he was mafker. The Taisa says it can't be that it's hefker, it has to be a matana, because we're going to soon bring a raya from our discussion of matana. But the Gemara wants to say is that in the case of the field where the animal's running through the field is kained if it's a matana. So here where you threw the wallet through the person's house, the house should be kained as a matana. And this should prove that although it is traveling through, it counts as if it had stopped. And therefore it is chal the kinyan then. So the Gemara says, no, it's not a raya, because we were discussing where it was rolling, it was traveling on the ground through the house. There the matana could be a kinyan. In this case, it was flying. Flying is a different shayla because it does not necessarily count as if it was stopped there, although something that's moving could count as it should have the same halacha as if it was stopped there. Flying through it may not.